What if the greatest threat to a royal child came not from outside the palace wall, but from someone who lived inside them? What if a security camera on an ordinary Thursday morning captured something so disturbing that the Prince of Wales made a decision that would shake the royal family to its core? This is not a rumor, this is not a guess. This is the story of what happened when a father watched the footage and refused to look away. Every palace has two sides, the side the world sees and the side hidden behind closed doors. On one quiet morning inside Kingston Palace, a camera caught something nobody was supposed to see. If you are new here, subscribe now and hit the bell. Stories like this one are exactly why this channel exists. Stay with us, every part matters.
The palace was quiet that morning. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that settles over a place right before something breaks. Inside Kensington Palace. The security monitors glowed in a dim room where a single guard sat watching feeds from 12 different cameras. Hallways, gardens, staircases. He had done this shift 100 times before. Nothing ever happened. Nothing was ever supposed to happen. But that Thursday morning, something did. The timestamp on camera 7 read 9:14 a.m., the hallway outside. Princess Charlotte's private sitting room. A hallway that, at that hour, should have been empty. It was not empty. The guard leaned closer to the screen. He rubbed his eyes. He looked again. He reached for his radio, then stopped. His hand hovered in the air. Because what he was seeing on that screen was not something you reported on a radio. This was something you picked up the phone for. This was something you took directly to the top. He sat very still for a moment, staring at the footage. Then he made the call. Prince William had been in a morning briefing when his private secretary knocked. The knock was soft but urgent. The kind of knock that means, stop what you are doing right now. William stepped out of the room. He listened. His face did not change. William had trained his face over decades not to change in front of others. But something shifted behind his eyes. Something cold and careful moved across his expression, like a cloud crossing the sun. He asked one question. Is Charlotte all right? The answer was yes. Charlotte was fine. She was in her lessons. She had no idea what had been captured on that camera. No idea at all. William nodded slowly. He said he wanted to see the footage himself. Immediately, they walked quickly through a back corridor, away from staff, away from aides, away from anyone who did not absolutely need to be there. The security room was small. It smelled like coffee and electronics. The guard stood when the Prince of Wales entered. William told him to sit down and play the footage. He watched it once without speaking. Then he asked them to play it again. What he saw was this: Camilla, the Queen Consort, standing in the hallway outside Charlotte's sitting room. She had not been expected there. There was no reason for her to be in that part of the palace at that hour. But there she was, and her body language told a story that her words, whatever they had been, would never be able to undo. Charlotte's door was partially open. Voices could be heard, though the camera had no sound. Only the picture. But the picture was enough. Camilla's posture was sharp, rigid, leaning slightly forward in a way that a grandmother might if she were scolding. Except Charlotte was not her grandchild. Not really. Not in the way that word is supposed to feel. And Charlotte, just barely visible through the cracked door, had stepped backward. One step, small, instinctive. The step a child takes when something frightens them. William watched that step on the screen, and something inside him, something he had kept carefully locked for years, came undone. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He turned to his secretary and said 4 words in a tone so controlled it was almost frightening. "Get me the logs." He wanted to know if this had happened before. He wanted to know how many times that hallway camera had recorded something it should not have had to record. He wanted to know everything, and he wanted to know it before the end of the day. Because by the end of that day, William had already made a decision. He just had not told anyone yet. And what he was about to discover in those logs would change everything. The logs went back 6 months. William sat alone in his private study, no aides, no secretary, no one, and read through every entry. Page after page of timestamps, camera references, and brief written notes from security staff would flagged unusual movement through restricted corridors. Most of the flags were minor. A wrong turn. A visitor escorted to the wrong wing. The ordinary, forgettable mistakes of a busy household. But 3 entries were different. 3 separate occasions over the past 5 months when Camilla had been recorded near the children's private. Areas that were not on any official route, not connected to any scheduled event, not close to any room that the Queen Consort had any formal reason to visit. 3 times. Without announcement, without escort, without anyone seeming to notice. Until now, William closed the folder. He pressed his hands flat on the desk and stared at the wall for a long moment. He was thinking, not with anger, though anger was there. Burning low and steady, but with the precision of a man who understood that what he did next would matter enormously. Not just for his family, for everything. He had grown up watching the institution swallow personal truth whole. He had watched it happen to his mother. He had promised himself, and he had promised Catherine, that it would never happen to his children. That promise now felt like it was being tested. He picked up the phone and called. Catherine first. She was at an engagement that afternoon and would not be back until evening. He did not want to say this over the phone. But he also could not let her walk back into the palace without knowing. He spoke carefully, choosing each word. He heard the silence on her end, that particular silence Catherine had when she was processing something that required every part of her composure. She asked the same question William had asked. Is Charlotte all right? Yes, Charlotte was fine. She was in her lessons. She had come home afterward and eaten her snack and asked if she could watch 20 minutes of television before homework. Normal, completely normal. The way it should be. But Catherine's voice, when she spoke again, had changed. There was something underneath it. Quiet and firm, the voice she used when she had made up her mind about something, and there was no longer any point in discussing alternatives. We need to talk tonight, she said. All of it. Show me everything. William said he would. He spent the rest of the afternoon making a second set of calls. To the head of palace security, to his most senior private secretary, to a small circle of people he trusted absolutely. People who had been with him long, enough to understand that what was said in these conversations could never leave the room. He did not call Camilla. He did not call his father, not yet, that evening. When the children were in bed and the palace had settled into its nighttime stillness, William and Catherine sat together in their private sitting room. The folder of logs was on the table between them. The footage had been transferred to a secure tablet. Catherine watched it without speaking. When it finished, she watched it again, focused, precise. The way she approached everything that required her full attention. Then she set the tablet down. She looked at William. She knew the cameras were there. Catherine said quietly. She has always known where the cameras are. It was a small detail, easy to miss. But Catherine had noticed something William had not. The angle of Camilla's body throughout the recording. Slightly turned. Positioned in a way that blocked the clearest view of her face. Not enough to be obvious, just enough to be deliberate. The realization landed between them like a stone dropped into still water. This had not been careless. This had not been accidental. Whatever had passed between Camilla and Charlotte in that hallway. Whatever words or tone or pressure had caused a little girl to step backward through her own doorway. It had been calculated, and calculation changed everything, because a mistake can be forgiven. A stumble, an overreach, a moment of poor judgment, those things could be addressed quietly and moved past. But this was not a mistake, and William and Catherine both knew it. The question now was what to do, and the answer, when it came, would send a shockwave through the entire royal household.
William walks in and faces his father, not as a son, but as a father protesting his child. He lays out the footage, the logs, the deliberate positioning. He shows Charles the frozen frame. Charles cannot deny it. His silence says everything. William makes one request: restrict Camilla's access. No drama, just a firm, quiet line. Charles agrees. And as a William drive home, one thought cuts the deepest. His 8-year old daughter had been crying this completely alone. That is what makes him fully decided.
The next morning, William requested a private meeting with his father. The request was formal. That was intentional. In a family where so much was communicated through tone and ritual, formality was its own kind of message. It said, "This is not a casual conversation." It said, "I am coming to you as the Prince of Wales, not simply as your son." King Charles received him in his private study at Clarence House. The room was warm, wood-paneled, filled with the kind of quiet that belonged to old buildings and older men. A fire was burning despite the season. Charles liked it warmer than most. William sat down. He did not accept tea. He placed the folder on the side table, but did not open it, not yet. He wanted to speak first. He told his father what had been found. He spoke slowly and without emotion, laying each fact down like a piece of evidence on a table. The footage, the timestamps, the 3 prior incidents in the logs. Camilla's positioning deliberate, angled, aware of exactly where the cameras were, and Charlotte stepping backward through her own door. Charles listened without interrupting. His face was difficult to read. It always had been. He had spent a lifetime behind that careful expression, and it had served him well in the most difficult moments of his public life. But William knew his father, and William could see, beneath the stillness, that something had landed. When William finished, Charles was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Are you certain about the positioning? Could it have been coincidental?" William had expected this question. He had asked it himself. He slid the tablet across the footage, paused on the clearest frame. He let his father look. Charles studied it for a long time, then he set the tablet down. He did not say Camilla would never do such a thing. He did not dismiss it. That, perhaps, told William more than any words could have. What Charles said was this: "What do you want to do?" It was a question that meant many things at once. It meant, "I hear you." It also meant, "The next step is yours." And underneath both of those things, it meant something Charles would never say out loud, that William had grown into a man who could not be managed anymore, and that Charles understood this, even if it cost him something to admit it. William answered simply, "I want the children's private areas to be exactly that. Private. No unscheduled access. No exceptions." He paused. Then he continued, "And I think it would be better for everyone if Camilla reduced her time at the residences we share, at least for now, until we understand what happened and why." Charles absorbed this. The fire crackled. Outside, a bird called once and then went silent. "You're asking me to speak to her?" Charles said. "I am," William said. "I think it should come from you." That was deliberate too. William did not want a confrontation. He did not want drama or headlines or the palace machine grinding into damage control mode. He wanted a quiet correction, swift, firm, undeniable. He wanted Camilla to understand, without any room for misunderstanding, that whatever boundary she had crossed, it would not be crossed again. Charles agreed, reluctantly, and with the weight of a man who had spent decades trying to hold too many things together at once. But he agreed. William left Clarence House and drove back to Kensington. The sky was gray and low, the kind of London autumn sky that presses down on everything beneath it. He sat in the back of the car and looked out at the city. He thought about Charlotte, about the way she had stepped back, about the fact that she had said nothing to him, nothing to Catherine. She had come home, eaten her snack, asked about television, and kept whatever had happened to herself. 8 years old, already learning to carry things quietly. That thought hurt him more than anything else, more than the footage, more than the logs, more than the deliberate angle of a woman who knew exactly where the cameras were. His daughter was 8 years old and already learning to carry things quietly. That was what he could not let stand. But what William did not know yet, what no one knew, was that Charlotte herself was about to speak, and what she would say that evening would push William past every limit he had ever set for himself. That evening, William sat with Charlotte after dinner. It was their routine, had been for years. After homework, after bath, in that soft window of time before sleep, William would sit on the edge of her bed and they would talk about her day, about funny things, about nothing in particular. It was the kind of ordinary, unhurried time that William had fought hard to protect for his children. Knowing better than most how easily it could be taken away, he did not plan to bring it up. He had told himself on the drive home that he would not push, that if Charlotte wanted to tell him, she would tell him in her own time. Children needed that space. He believed that deeply. But Charlotte brought it up herself. She was quiet for a moment, pulling at a loose thread on her duvet. And then she said, without looking up, "Dad, did something happen today?" Everyone seemed different. William looked at her. She had Catherine's eyes, that direct, clear gaze that could see around corners. He chose his words carefully. "Why do you ask, Bug?" She shrugged, the shrug of a child who is pretending something is smaller than it is. "I don't know. I just felt it." He waited. She pulled at the thread a moment longer. Then she said, "Grandma Camilla came to my room yesterday." William kept his expression calm. His hands, resting on his knees, did not move. "Did she?" he said, gentle, unhurried, as if this were the most ordinary thing in the world. "She said she just wanted to check on me." Charlotte paused. But she was asking questions. "About what you and Mummy talk about. At dinner? At night?" Another pause. She wanted to know if you talk about the palace. About decisions and things. The room was very still. Charlotte finally looked up. Her face was not frightened. She was too composed for that, all ready to practice that composure. But there was something uncertain around her eyes. Something that was waiting to be told it was okay to feel what she had felt. "I didn't know what to say," she said quietly. "So I didn't say anything." And then she got a little. Charlotte searched for the right word. Sharp. Her voice got sharp. Like I was being difficult. William breathed in. He breathed out. He moved to sit beside her on the bed. And she leaned against him the way she had since she was very small, fitting herself into the familiar space beneath his arm. "You did exactly the right thing," he said. His voice was steady. "You don't have to answer questions like that from anyone. Do you understand?" She nodded against his shoulder. "And if it ever happens again, anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, anyone asking you things that feel wrong, you come to me or Mummy immediately. That same day. That same hour if you can." "Okay," she said. "I mean it, Charlotte." I know, she said. Then, after a moment, is she going to be in trouble? William thought about how to answer that. About all the ways this question was more complicated than it sounded politically, personally, dynastically. About all the layers of history and obligation and public image that wrapped around even the simplest family conflict inside these walls. Then he looked at his daughter, 8 years old, already carrying a thing alone that she should never have had to carry, and he set all of those layers aside. That's not for you to worry about, he said. That's mine to handle. She seemed satisfied with that. She relaxed further against him. And after a moment, she asked if she could have an extra 10 minutes of reading before the light went out. And William said yes, of course, and she smiled a full, uncomplicated smile and the shadow. Lifted, he kissed the top of her head and stood up. But, as he walked to the door and turned off the overhead light, leaving only the soft glow of her reading lamp, something had solidified inside him. Hard and quiet and absolutely certain. He had tried to give this the benefit of the doubt. He had gone to his father calmly. He had spoken of privacy and boundaries and arrangements. That was over now. Charlotte had told him what happened, in her own words, in her own time, and what she described was not a misunderstanding. It was a child being used, quietly, carefully, by someone who had calculated every angle, including which way to turn so the camera could not see her face. William knew exactly what he was going to do, and he was going to do it tonight.
William called his father past 10 at night and delivered Charlotte's words directly. This is no longer just a video. This is a child's own words. He makes his demand clearly. Update protocols, written confirmations, and Camilla removed from their residence. Charles says William is asking him to choose. William answers with one quiet line. I am asking you to be a grandfather. By morning, the protocol are updated. No announcement, no headlines, just a door. Quietly, permanently closed.
He called his father again that night. It was late past 10, and Charles was not accustomed to calls at that hour. But he answered. He always answered William, even when he did not want to hear what was coming. William told him what Charlotte had said. He told him without editorializing, without anger in his voice, just the facts, in order, exactly as Charlotte had given them. He wanted his father to understand that this was no longer about a piece of security footage. This was about his daughter being questioned, probed, pressured however gently, however carefully for information, about her parents in a child's bedroom by someone who had positioned herself away from the camera. Charles was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was different from the morning. The careful, considered tone was still there, but underneath it was something heavier, something that sounded almost like grief, the grief of a man who had built his late happiness on something that had now cracked in a way that could not be quietly repaired. He said he would speak to Camilla that night. William said that was not enough. Not anymore. He said it calmly, respectfully, without threat or ultimatum in his tone, but absolutely without room for negotiation. The children's residences need to be protected, William said. That means no unscheduled access to any area connected to George, Charlotte, or Louis. It means I need written confirmation from the household office that the access protocols have been formally updated. And it means he paused, just briefly. It means that until Catherine and I are satisfied that our children are safe in their own home, Camilla should not be a guest at those residences. The words landed. There was silence on the other end of the line. William waited. He had learned patience the hard way from years of watching the institution grind forward regardless of individual feeling, individual cost. He could wait. Finally, Charles said, "You understand what you're asking?" "Yes," William said. "I do." Another silence. You are asking me to choose. No, William said quietly. I'm asking you to be a grandfather. That was the sentence that ended the conversation. Not harshly, there was no door slammed, no voice raised. Charles said he understood. He said he needed until morning. William said that was fine. He said goodnight to his father and hung up the phone. He sat in the dark of his study for a long time after that. He thought about his mother, about the choices she had been forced into or denied, and the price she had paid for the institution's unwillingness to protect her privately, even when it could not protect her publicly. He thought about what it cost a family to keep secrets, how they accumulated over years, how they shaped children in ways that no one could fully see or fully measure. He thought about Charlotte, asleep down the hall, her reading lamp still on by morning. The household office had been contacted. By mid-morning, the access protocols had been updated quietly, with no announcement, no press release, no acknowledgement to anyone outside a very small circle. Camilla was not removed dramatically. There was no public confrontation. That was not William's way, and he made sure it was not the palace's way either. What happened was quieter than that, and in many ways more final. An arrangement was made. Private, firm. The residences William and Catherine shared with their children would now operate under stricter household rules that apply to all guests, including senior royals. Visits would be scheduled, confirmed, escorted. The door that had been left open through custom, through assumption, through the ordinary carelessness of people who have always lived in the same spaces and assumed they always would. That door was now closed, and in the palace, a closed door handled properly said everything without saying anything at all. But not everyone accepts. A closed door quietly, and the weeks that followed would reveal exactly what kind of silence Camilla had chosen and what it meant for the family that would one day wear the crown. In the weeks that followed, the palace looked the same from the outside. The photographs continued. The engagements, the public appearances, the careful choreography of a family doing its duty in view of the world. William and Catherine stood side by side at official events, composed and warm. Charles and Camilla fulfilled their schedule. There were photographs of them smiling, announcements about upcoming tours, charitable initiatives. The ordinary machinery of a working monarchy rolling forward. From the outside, nothing had changed, but inside, in the hallways and private rooms that the cameras sometimes caught and sometimes did not, everything had shifted. Camilla had received Charles's message. How she received it, what she said in the privacy of their own rooms. What passed between a husband and wife in the hours after a conversation like that, none of that would ever be fully known. The palace was very good at keeping the things that mattered most locked away from everyone. What was known by the small circle of people close to William and Catherine was that Camilla had not contested the new arrangement formally. She had not gone to the press. She had not leaked. She had not pushed back through any of the quiet channels that powerful people in that world were accustomed to using. Whether that silence was acceptance or strategy, no one could say for certain. What it meant, practically, was that the weeks passed in Charlotte's private corridor remained undisturbed. Catherine watched all of it closely. She always had, always been the one in their partnership who noticed the grain of things, the small shifts in atmosphere that others missed. She noticed that Charlotte, in the weeks after that bedtime conversation with her father, seemed lighter, not in any way she could easily point to. Charlotte had never complained, never cried, never said a single word about anything being wrong. But something in her had been carrying a quiet tension, the kind that settles into a child's body without them even knowing it is there. And that tension had now, slowly, begun to release. Catherine noticed it at the dinner table, in the way Charlotte laughed, in the way she moved through the house with a small but certain ease that had not quite been there before. She said nothing to Charlotte about any of it. Children healed best, she believed, when the adults around them handled the difficult parts quietly and let the ordinary warmth of daily life do the rest. That was what they gave her. Ordinary warmth. The particular gift that William and Catherine had always fought hardest to protect, the gift of a childhood that felt, wherever possible, like just that, a childhood. As for William, he carried what had happened the way he carried most hard things, internally, quietly, with a discipline that sometimes looked like coldness to people who did not know him well. He did not talk about it. He went about his work. He came home. He sat on Charlotte's bed at the end of the day and talked about the funny, small things. But he remembered. He would always remember. The way she had said it, her voice got sharp. Like I was being difficult, he would remember it because it told him something he needed to know. Something about the gap between the world his children lived in and the world he was still learning to fully protect them from, about how quietly pressure could move through a family, how it could enter through the people you were supposed to trust most, how it could reach a child in a bedroom behind a half-open door on an ordinary Thursday morning. The palace went on. The family went on. The photographs and the duty and the long inheritance of it all continued. But something had changed in the foundation, something irreversible and necessary. William had drawn a line. Not loudly, not for the cameras or the headlines or the speculation that would circle endlessly and never quite get it right. He had drawn it for Charlotte. In the quiet of a little girl's bedroom, in the simplest, most absolute language a parent possesses. That's mine to handle, and he had handled it. That, in the end, was the whole story. Not the footage or the logs or the careful positioning in a hallway. Not the late-night call to the king, not the closed doors or the updated protocols. The whole story was a father who found out that something had touched his daughter and who made absolutely certain it never would again. Some walls are built to impress. Some walls are built to protect. This one was built for Charlotte, and it would hold.
If this story moved you, if you felt every part of it, then you already know what this channel is about. We tell the stories that powerful people hope stay hidden. We go behind the walls. We stay until the full picture is clear. If you are not subscribed yet, please do that right now. It takes 2 seconds, and it means you will never miss a story like this one. And if you watched all the way to the end, thank you. It means more than you know. Drop a comment below. Tell us what moment hit you hardest. What is the footage? Charlotte words or the moment William said, I am asking you to be a grandfather. We read every single comment. The next story is already waiting. We will see you there.